Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Book of Proverbs series. If you are new here, this is a Bible study for beginners and beyond, where we read an entire chapter of Proverbs first, then pause to explore its meaning, application, and how to live it out. Kindly subscribe to this channel where you will learn life-changing lessons. Just click on the subscribe button. Today we'll explore Proverbs 2. I want us not just to read it, but to let its truths sink in, to see how wisdom, as God's gift, protects us and leads us in righteousness. My hope is that by the end of today's session, Proverbs 2 will come alive for you, not just as ancient words, but as a guide for daily living. Now let's read Proverbs Chapter 2. My son, if thou wilt receive my words, and hide my commandments with thee, so that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom, and apply thine heart to understanding. Yea, if thou criest after knowledge, and liftest up thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest her as silver, and searchest for her as for hid treasures, then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord, and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. He layeth up sound wisdom for the righteous. He is a buckler to them that walk uprightly. He keepeth the paths of judgment, and preserveth the way of his saints. Then shalt thou understand righteousness, and judgment, and equity, yea, every good path. When wisdom entereth into thine heart, and knowledge is pleasant unto thy soul, discretion shall preserve thee, understanding shall keep thee, to deliver thee from the way of the evil man, from the man that speaketh froward things, who leave the paths of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice to do evil and delight in the frowardness of the wicked, whose ways are crooked, and they froward in their paths. To deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger which flattereth with her words, which forsaketh the guide of her youth, and forgetteth the covenant of her God. For her house inclineth unto death, and her paths unto the dead. None that go unto her return again, neither take they hold of the paths of life, that thou mayest walk in the way of good men, and keep the paths of the righteous. For the upright shall dwell in the land, and the perfect shall remain in it. But the wicked shall be cut off from the earth, and the transgressors shall be rooted out of it. This brings to an end the chapter reading. We will now dive into the Bible study explanations, the structure of Proverbs, Chapter 2. Before we dive into the content, let's understand the beautiful structure of this chapter. Proverbs 2 is essentially one long, interconnected thought presented as a conditional statement. It follows an if-then pattern. If you seek wisdom in these specific ways, then here are the incredible results you'll experience. The chapter divides naturally into two main sections. Verses 1 through 11 focus on the pursuit of wisdom and the promise of divine protection and understanding. Verses 12 through 22 describe the specific dangers from which wisdom will protect us, evil men and immoral women, and conclude with the contrasting destinies of the righteous and the wicked. The pursuit of wisdom, verses 1-4. Solomon begins with an urgent personal appeal. My son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, this isn't casual advice from a distant teacher. This is a father speaking to his child, and by extension, God speaking to each of us who read Proverbs today. Notice the progression of verbs Solomon uses. Accept, store up, turn your ear, apply your heart, call out, and cry aloud. These aren't passive activities. Wisdom doesn't fall into our laps while we scroll through our phones or binge-watch television. The pursuit of wisdom requires intentional, active engagement. Accept my words means we must be willing to receive instruction. How often do we resist wisdom because it challenges our preconceptions or requires us to change? The first step is simply being teachable, having a posture of humility that says, I don't know everything, and I'm willing to learn. Store up my commands within you takes it further. This is about internalization and memorization. In our Proverbs audiobook Bible recordings, Hearing these words repeatedly helps with this storage process, but we must go beyond hearing to hiding God's word in our hearts. When wisdom is stored within us, it becomes readily available when we need to make quick decisions. Then Solomon says to turn your ear to wisdom and apply your heart to understanding. One is about listening. The other is about engaging our entire being. Wisdom requires both intellectual assent and emotional commitment. We can't just understand truth. We must love it, desire it, and let it shape our affections. In verse 3, the intensity increases. Call out for insight, cry aloud for understanding. This is the language of desperation, of urgent need. Solomon is telling us that seeking wisdom should be as urgent as a drowning person crying out for rescue. When was the last time you pursued wisdom with that kind of intensity? When did you last pray for understanding with the same fervency you might pray for physical healing or financial provision? Verse 4 gives us perhaps the most striking metaphor in this chapter. If you look for it as for silver and search for it as for hidden treasure. In Solomon's time, and even in ours, people will dedicate their entire lives to the pursuit of wealth. They'll study markets, take risks, sacrifice sleep, and invest everything they have for financial gain. Solomon says wisdom deserves that same level of dedication, actually even more. Think about treasure hunters. They don't casually stroll along hoping to stumble upon gold. They research, they plan, they dig, they persist through disappointment, and they don't give up when the first few attempts yield nothing. This is how we should approach the book of Proverbs and all of God's wisdom. Not as a religious obligation we check off our list, but as treasure hunters on the most important quest of our lives. The promise of understanding. Verses 5-8. After laying out the conditions, the if portion of this chapter, Solomon now presents the glorious then. Then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. This is the ultimate reward of seeking wisdom. We come to know God Himself. Wisdom isn't ultimately about making better decisions or living a more successful life, though those are wonderful benefits. Wisdom is about relationship with the Creator. When we read Proverbs in English or any language, we're not just learning principles, we're learning about the character of God. The fear of the Lord is a phrase we encountered in Proverbs 1, and it appears again here as both the beginning and the goal of wisdom. It's a reverent awe, a healthy respect that acknowledges God's holiness, power, and authority. Understanding the fear of the Lord means we see God correctly, not as a cosmic vending machine or a distant deity, but as the holy, loving, powerful Creator who deserves our worship and obedience. Verse 6 reveals why wisdom works. For the Lord gives wisdom. From His mouth come knowledge and understanding. This is crucial. Wisdom isn't something we generate on our own through human cleverness or philosophical reasoning. True wisdom is a gift from God. When we pursue wisdom the way Solomon describes in verses 1-4, God responds by giving us what we seek. He doesn't hide wisdom from sincere seekers. He generously provides it. Verses 7 and 8 describe God as actively involved in protecting those who pursue wisdom. He holds success in store for the upright. He is a shield to those whose walk is blameless. God isn't a passive observer of our lives. He's storing up good things for those who walk in integrity. He's actively shielding us from dangers we may not even perceive. For He guards the course of the just and protects the way of His faithful ones. This imagery is beautiful. God is like a bodyguard, a security detail, constantly watching over the path of those who follow Him. When we read Proverbs and apply them to our lives, we're not just following good advice. We're aligning ourselves with divine protection. The results of wisdom, verses 9-11. Then you will understand what is right and just and fair, every good path. Wisdom brings moral clarity. In a world of moral confusion, where everyone seems to have their own truth, wisdom from the book of Proverbs provides clear guidance on right and wrong, justice and injustice, fairness and corruption. This isn't about becoming self-righteous or judgmental. It's about developing discernment, the ability to distinguish between good and evil, between what leads to life and what leads to destruction. As you continue through our Proverbs audiobook Bible series, you'll notice this theme of discernment appearing repeatedly. Verse 10 gives us the internal transformation that happens. For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. This is remarkable. Wisdom doesn't just sit in our minds as abstract information. It penetrates our hearts, changing our desires and affections. And knowledge becomes pleasant. We actually enjoy truth. We delight in understanding. We find satisfaction in learning God's ways. When wisdom enters your heart, you're not just externally complying with rules. You're internally transformed, wanting to do what's right because you've come to love what's good. This is the difference between religion and relationship, between duty and delight. Verse 11 presents two more guardians. Discretion will protect you, and understanding will guard you. Discretion is the ability to make sound judgments about what to say and what not to say, what to do and what to avoid. Understanding is seeing beneath the surface, recognizing patterns, and anticipating consequences. Together, these qualities act as a protective shield around our lives. Protection from evil men, verses 12-15. Now Solomon gets specific about what wisdom protects us from. First, wisdom saves you from the ways of wicked men, from men whose words are perverse. Evil people exist. This isn't pessimism, it's realism. There are individuals who will try to lead you astray, who speak twisted things, who call good evil and evil good. Wisdom helps you recognize these voices and resist their influence. These wicked men have left the straight paths to walk in dark ways. They've made a deliberate choice to abandon what's right. Verse 14 tells us something even more disturbing. Who delight in doing wrong and rejoice in the perverseness of evil. They don't just do wrong reluctantly or in moments of weakness. They enjoy it. They celebrate wickedness. They take pleasure in corruption. Whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. This describes deception and dishonesty. These aren't people who make mistakes. They're deliberately deceptive, always scheming, never straightforward. When you consistently read Proverbs in English or study the book of Proverbs in any form, you develop an inner radar for this kind of person. You learn to recognize the patterns, the red flags, the subtle manipulations. Wisdom doesn't make you paranoid, but it does make you discerning. Protection from sexual immorality, verses 16-19. The second specific danger Solomon addresses is the adulterous woman, from the wayward woman with her seductive words. In Solomon's context, this often referred to prostitutes or women who committed adultery, but the principle applies equally to any form of sexual temptation or immorality, regardless of gender. Sexual sin has destroyed countless lives, marriages, ministries, careers, families, and futures. Solomon dedicates significant space in Proverbs to warning about sexual immorality because he understands its destructive power. Verse 17 reveals something crucial. This woman has left the partner of her youth and ignored the covenant she made before God. Sexual immorality isn't just a physical act, it's a breaking of covenant, a violation of sacred promises. It treats something precious and holy, marital intimacy, as cheap and disposable. Verses 18-19 use stark language. Surely her house leads down to death and her paths to the spirits of the dead. None who go to her return or attain the paths of life. This isn't exaggeration, it's truth. Sexual sin leads to spiritual death, even if physical life continues. It creates bondage, shame, and separation from God. And tragically, many who go down this path find it incredibly difficult to return. Wisdom provides protection by helping us recognize temptation before we're entangled in it, by giving us the strength to flee when seduction approaches, and by reminding us of the consequences that momentary pleasure produces. The two paths, verses 20-22. Solomon concludes chapter 2 by contrasting two groups of people and their destinies. Thus you will walk in the ways of the good and keep to the paths of the righteous. Wisdom doesn't just protect us from evil, it directs us toward good. It's not enough to avoid wicked people. We must actively pursue righteous companions. The company we keep shapes our character, and wisdom helps us choose friends, mentors, and community that will encourage us toward godliness. Verse 21 presents the promise, "For the upright will live in the land, and the blameless will remain in it." In the Old Testament context, this referred to the Promised Land, but the principle extends to all of God's blessings. Those who walk in integrity will experience stability, blessing, and God's favor. Verse 22 provides the sobering contrast. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the unfaithful will be torn from it. This is the inevitable consequence of rejecting wisdom. Not immediately, perhaps. The wicked often seem to prosper temporarily, but ultimately, those who persist in wickedness will lose everything they've gained through their evil schemes. Conclusion and application. As we conclude our exploration of Proverbs Chapter 2, let's remember the central message. Wisdom is worth pursuing with everything we have, and the rewards of that pursuit are protection, understanding, and ultimately, knowing God Himself. I encourage you to return to this chapter regularly as you read Proverbs. Let these truths sink deep into your heart. Make the pursuit of wisdom your daily priority, not as drudgery, but as treasure hunting. In our next session, we'll continue through the book of Proverbs, building on this foundation. Until then, may you seek wisdom as you would seek silver, and may you find the knowledge of God that transforms everything. If you are yet to subscribe, please do so. Your subscription means a lot to us.